Okay. Well, Coach Patrick Crarey the second. Well, it's official. It was official. It still is official, according to FAMU Athletics and the contract that he signed as the 15th head men's basketball coach back on April 17th. I did see the contract. It was signed. Even Dr. Robinson signed it. Even the AD signed it. Yeah, so the contract is signed. Now, obviously, what took place earlier this week, in my opinion, and Kelvin, feel free to jump in and tell me if you think otherwise, was supposed to be the mere formality of the contract approval by our FAMU Board of Trustees, which is standard practice, right? The FAMU Board of Trustees reviews all contracts, athletic contracts of its head coaches. And I have not, in my recollection recently, I have not seen anything like what I saw on Monday. Have you seen anything relative to what we saw Monday, Kelvin, in your recollection?
What a coach contract not being confirmed by trustees?
Yes.
Unfortunately, in the HBCU world, it's
No. Let's say
no. I don't know. In the HBCU world, that's FAMU included.
it seems to be happening a lot.
It seems to happen.
It does, doesn't it?
It does.
It
And
does.
I do agree with you that it should have been a formality, but there's a reason for it, though.
Yeah. So again, Coach Crarey, again, when he was officially announced, we were actually on the show. We got beat on the breaking news by about 30 minutes or so, if I recall. But just some of the background on Coach. All right. I mean, Coach is a young guy in his 40s, early 40s. Comes from a program out of the South Florida area, and previously in the Washington D.C. area. Has had success on those two levels, and stepping towards Florida A&M, a Division I mid-major / low resource, however you want to look at it, is the next progression for somebody who has done what he's done in the past decade of his coaching career. Again, all of this was signed on April 17th. But what's curious and disappointing, and again, see, just to say that it happened. This happened on the 17th of April. No, the 18th of April, excuse me. That was a Thursday.
Before donate gate.
Yes, that's important. Very important.
It is important.
Before donate gate, this contract happened. Okay, the contract happened, the signing, the coach coming in. And again, it should be noted, this took place right about a month after it was made known that the previous coach, Coach McCollum, would not be issued a new contract. So on March 20th, AD Sykes, the athletic department, issued a statement saying that Coach McCollum services and his contract would not be renewed. Essentially, his term would end, or time would end, on June 30th, that's when his contract ends, technically. Okay. But as of March 20th, that's when the search for a new coach would begin. Okay. So it was well known. And, the process, it took how long it took. Okay.
A month.
Yeah, it took right about a month. Okay. Now,
where it was going to take some time again, because we talked about how the budget works. So,
yes.
I mean, You got to pay me. You got to pay Coach McCullum. So the money wasn't on the line and would not be on the line.
And what's also interesting though, Kelvin, in terms of coach's staff. Now, Coach McCullum had 3 assistant coaches. Okay. And when I went to go look at the staff and website, I noticed that one particular assistant coach, stayed on staff and carried over from, one administration to the next. Okay. And so in the interim, when all that was happening, it was stated, and we talked about this at last week's show, it was stated that the Rattler boosters were going to come up with $20,000 to help cover some of Coach Crarey's travel and operating personal expenses, because he wasn't going to get a contract or wasn't going to get paid from FAMU until technically July 1, that the boosters were going to put $20,000 up. Okay. So that was, in theory, supposed to happen. But we found out last week that hadn't happened. And you would think, Kelvin, well, let me not put words in anyone's mouth. I was of the thought going in to this meeting on Monday that might be talked about. But what ended up being talked about, I think, was the result of a news report, and a letter from a prominent parent of a basketball player on the team. And I think as a result of that letter, the Board of Trustees seemed to go into Monday's meeting with, as they might say, red flags, concerns, which to me, it just came out of left field. Okay, we'll get into all of that in just a second. But here I'm going to put together a little timeline of what we know. Okay. The timeline of events leading from March 20th, when Coach McCullum's contract was not renewed. Okay. On April 17th, we had a new coach that was announced. The 18th was the press conference. The contract was signed by the AD, General Counsel, and President Robinson. According to the letter by Reverend Julius McAllister, who is the parent of a player on the team from last season, it was stated in his letter that on April 27th, which was a Saturday, that the coach called players and that they would not be granted a roster spot. Okay. We'll talk about some particulars within that letter, which I don't think are accurate, but in the letter says that 16 players would not be retained, or I guess the word was dismissed. Okay. The next day, according to the letter, Reverend McAllister made the decision to let's see, as I said right there, he called the coach to ask about the decision. The coach stated that he would help every young man find a new school if they wanted to continue playing basketball. Okay. It should be noted that a month later, Coach Crarey attended the National Alumni Association convention in Tampa. He was there. And I think I put that there because it's significant. I'm sure every trustee member was in attendance at the National Alumni Convention. Fair to say? Fair to say. They had a meeting. Okay. According to Reverend McAllister's letter, on June 3rd, he actually made a visit to the Lawson Center to have a meeting with Coach Crarey. That meeting did not go as well as Reverend McAllister would have liked it to have gone. But, you know, if you've read the letter, we can talk about that in a second. 3 more weeks pass. And on Sunday, the 23rd, Reverend McAllister pens a letter to Dr. Robinson, Chair Harper, Trustee Lawson, Trustee Klatt, other members of the BOT. It's published in the Rattler Nation blog spot, which I think came out on Sunday. Actually, it came out on the weekend. Really, word of the letter got out, which was kind of interesting. Word about the letter kind of got out before the actual publish date, so I'm not really sure how that happened. But on semantics, I'm not going to play CSI detective here. And then, of course, leading into Monday, where at the end of some interesting discussion, the Board of Trustees decides to table the contract of Coach Crarey and says they should be tabled until at least August. And again, June 24th was the first day of Summer B session. It was the first day for 7 new players to the FAMU basketball team, 3 returning players. So a total of 10 players began workouts on Monday and practices on Monday. The head basketball coach, who still hasn't received compensation that was promised by the boosters on the 20th, and as of right now, doesn't have an approved 3-year contract from the Board of Trustees. And that's where we sit on a Wednesday. Now, all right. Did I lay that out pretty well?
Yeah, that's pretty much facts, right? For the most part, yeah.
Facts.
Yeah, one other thing I would add, Brian, I don't know if you want to include it, but
Sure.
for men's basketball, the end of the transfer portal window was May 1st.
Correct.
And what I don't know, I know for football, they do it. I don't know if it's across all sports or basketball specifically, that when there's a change in coaches, there's like a 30-day window. That's an exception to the normal transfer window. So I don't know if that comes into play or if that clock started ticking for the 30 days when McCollum was not returned, when there was announced that he would not be returning, or if it was, I don't know when that clock starts. But I don't know if that comes into play too.
I will add one more carrot also, and that is that if you're not going to renew a player on an athletic scholarship, that it has to be in writing. It has to be signed off by the sports administrator, I think, and it's in compliance, and it has to be filed. So there's a process to not renewing student athletes, even on a year-to-year basis. There are ways, there are exceptions, like if people don't go to class and some other, get in trouble. There are some ways where you can rescind that scholarship within a year, but typically the process is year to year. And if you're not going to renew, students do have some rights, and there's a process that has to happen. And typically that process doesn't involve a volunteer. Typically it's a person who's a paid coach or administrator.
Right. Now, it's funny you mentioned about being something put in writing. My sources tell me that there is written communication to every individual who would not be returning to the team. Okay. Now we know how information gets out. I'm sure that will eventually show up. Question is, when and where, but it will most likely show up. Okay. Another thing that, and before we go to comments here regarding this, I think it's also important to understand something about the numbers. Okay. Because in doing a little investigation this morning, okay, there were 19 players on the 2023-24 FAMU basketball team, right? 13 scholarship, I believe 6 non-scholarship players. Okay. There were original, well, and it's kind of, and of course, as you saw in the summary, the statement that there were 16 players that weren't, or I guess 16 players that were dismissed, right? Technically, that's not accurate. There were 3 players who obviously are returning. You can see their names on the website. They have their pictures there. And there's actually one additional player who is being brought back on scholarship who suffered an injury from last season. So technically, there are 4 players receiving a scholarship that played last season. Okay. 6 players before the announcement of a new coach and after the announcement of Coach McCullum not being renewed and entered the transfer portal. They entered the transfer portal between March 22nd and maybe within that whole week. 6 players. Marcus is very aware of this. I know Marcus retweets and talks about a lot of this as well. Okay. 2 other players entered the portal after the new coach was announced, after Coach Crarey was announced. Okay. So right now we have a total of, what's that total? That's 8 players who have said they're going into the transfer portal. Some of those players have new schools that they're already at. Some of them don't. One particular player, a key contributor on the team, has no more eligibility and is actually graduating. Another player of the 19 actually left the team during the season. Somehow he still counted as part of the 19 or 16, right? And then by my count, there's still one player who is not in the portal, but is not expected to return. Okay. Then there are 4 players who actually played less than 5 games, presumably all walk-ons, okay, that were not given or told that they would be a part of the summer workouts, but were told that they would have an opportunity to try out in the fall, along with other walk-ons and students who want to try out. So again, there's your summary of 16 players, quote unquote, dismissed. Much of this was, when brought up in the Board of Trustees meetings, was disputed by AD Sykes. But I don't think that mattered to the trustees, in my opinion. So let's get into it, Kelvin. I'm gonna skip our normal first hour break because I want to stay hot on this while we're in it, because I know, like I said, we want to get to this before our guests come on in the hour 2. So I come to you, Kelvin, and give you the first shot to share your thoughts on what took place from your viewpoint?
So let me say, first of all, Coach Crarey, welcome to FAMU. Glad to have you. I want you to put together the best team possible. And hopefully this situation will get resolved. Now, with that disclaimer out the way, the first comment I have is dealing with difficult people, difficult parents. Bryan, you've coached, I've coached at the high school level. I've been an administrator. Dealing with difficult people and difficult circumstances come with the job. And skillful people learn and find a way to get buy-in, to make people feel like they're part of a partnership, right? Even when they don't get the answer that they wanted. I dealt with it as an administrator. You don't think on game day football, all those folks who say they know the president and they know this person and they feel entitled that they didn't try to use that influence and threaten your job and everything else? It happens. But the skillful people learn how to be professional, to communicate, to have empathy, and to work to get a win-win situation. You never wanted it to be when it's particularly, let me say this. There's a lot of walk-ons on that team, right? There was what, 6?
Yeah, at least.
And I'm gonna say this, and it's something that they probably didn't share with you. That ain't the only walk-on that have influential people. And did you treat all the walk-ons the same? If you didn't, words get out. So, but in terms of dealing with the difficult situation, right? We're talking about a kid who's by all accounts a good kid, academic kid. He's on academic scholarship. He's not even athletic scholarship, so it ain't costing you nothing. I don't know how much you can do with it if a parent is just involved and and loves, and you can't tell pops, you can't control what pops do. You control what you can do, and it probably helps if people know you and you're not. It don't seem like you're avoiding people, right? So I don't know what the interaction and comments were between that particular situation, but I will say this. It's important to note that's a pillar of the community, someone who hasn't previously had any issues. I'm talking about Reverend McAllister, not known for meddling in terms of FAMU stuff. Nah, but people when their kids involved, they may be a little different. And they may be a little aggressive. Some people have blind spots. So I mean, and that's understandable. You got to handle that, but you still got to handle that. A certain way, right? I don't care what you say. No job you gonna go to. There's always a person that you got to deal with, whether you want to deal with it or not. So that's not nothing new. The other thing I say this, and I saw a couple of people hearing about this on in the board. This is less about coach, and it's more about the AD.
Agree, 100%.
I'm not gonna run from that, right? At the end of the day, there's a history of decisions starting back from the OBC all the way to peak management sports, all the way to Coach Simmons leaving, all the way to the bowling coach having an issue with players and parents, all the way to the hiring of the new coach, all the way to donate gate, all the way to a confrontation at the convention, all the way to the play-by-play announcer, the voice of Bragg, Sterling, not doing the spring game and not being announcer for the fall. It's always some crap happening. Nothing is routine. And so I understand why people question, maybe not the coach per se and exactly, but question, are all I's dotted and T's crossed? Because it's just been one thing after another. And frankly, it's going to continue to be one thing after another until it's dealt with. Bottom line. And I'm going to leave it there for now and let everybody else get in.
What do you got, Marcus?
Well, I mean, well, first and foremost, I mean, like Kelvin just alluded to, I mean, this is like another peg of a series of things that have happened. I don't know. I mean, with this particular administration over the last 2 years, but going back 20 years, it's always something. This, I think, could have been very much avoided. And I don't know to what degree, and this is my own speculation. I don't know to what degree this has more to do with the administration in Lee Hall and Gaither than it does with the coach. But it seems that, and I don't know to what degree the issues brought up by the BOT, have merit, or whether it's a vehicle to do something else. There could be something there. But I'm just curious as to it's to me, my own speculation was that, I mean, it seemed like they had that loaded in the chamber already. I mean, I don't know if the BOT gets involved in NCAA bylaws and all that stuff and Title IX. I don't know. I guess my assumption and reading even the FAMU BOT webpage, your purview is policy making at the university level. And I know the Gregory Jerami or Jerami Gate, whatever you want to call it, probably heighten their awareness and maybe turn up the screws and asking a little bit more detailed questions, because once again, now you put the BOT in a position where they're signing off on something and they're going to want extra details. Just like, someone gets in trouble or lies to you, you're going to have that extra level of detail to make sure that you're not getting fooled twice. But it does seem like it's more about VP A.D. Sykes and President Robinson than it is Coach Crarey. I don't know to what degree, and I don't know what the mechanisms are for coaches in that position where, at the university level, where the hiring line is still being paid out and the coach has already been announced, but it hasn't been completed. I don't know what vehicles are normally used at the university level, at any university. But it does sound like that bridge payment, if you will, from the boosters would be that thing, because it's not coming directly from a university, but a DSO. And so it's not necessarily, but I don't know. But that seems like a simple fix as well. So we'll just have to see how things play out. But it seems like, once again, we have, between football and basketball, promising starts or finishing off a championship season, and there's some type of drama that is curtailing the momentum going forward, and it needs to be addressed, whatever that needs to be done, whether we just need to get our stuff in order, and stop having all this dramatics, have everything lined up, whoever it is, wherever it lies, or if we just have these ulterior motives that we're unaware of that are just going on because of personalities or the feeling that someone doesn't belong in a certain position, whatever it is. But
Hey, 30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Go ahead.
When you see a bad marriage, before they finally call it quits, this is what it looked like. This is a bad marriage. I don't care what people how you try to justify it, man. This ain't gonna work. It's not working. If the president, Dr. Robinson, and the AD, if they were better at their jobs, then they could process this and this thing would have got signed off on. And what I mean by that, if they had developed a better relationship with the board, if they communicate things and more transparent with what's going on, understanding that right now the board has a heightened sense of awareness and are a little more agitated. So
They
it
lost the
requires
benefit of the doubt.
right. So it requires them to do a little bit more. This should have been routine, absolutely. But I'm not looking at the board other than they in a bad marriage and nobody wants to walk away. Nobody want to make it official. All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, I want to get some points in here because, like I said, I want to make sure we get out of this at the top of the hour, so that we transition from basketball to football. My personal feelings and seeing all of this is 100% political in my opinion. I believe, because some of the things that were quoted and shout out to Gerald Thomas, GT3 of the Democrat, and even I know Allison Posey was tweeting, but live tweeting and even doing the story. There's some things that some of the board members, trustees are asking that just are head scratching to me. Absolutely head scratching in this process. Again, the coach has been in the role since the 17th of April. He was at the National Alumni Convention. No one met the man. He was not. He was in no spaces being introduced to trustee members. Nobody, because if you listen to some of the quotes, the trustees were like, I don't know who he is. I didn't know where he came from. How did he get here? None of that was, that's amazing. That's amazing if that happened. Okay. To me, right? Trustee Gibbons, as quoted by GT3, suggests to push back the contract approval or not hire him. Says there's not enough information regarding Crarey's salary being tripled, and details of the voluntary agreement. Okay, wait a minute. Being tripled? Being tripled. The Gibbons says, quote, this is from the Tallahassee Democrat article, quote, we don't know now listen to this. We don't know the process, the individuals, and can't get a clear answer on if this person's salary has been tripled. I've never seen where a head coach in a volunteer status comes in without a contract. This brings red flags to my mind. We should push this back or not hire this person. This is the chair of the DSO and Athletics Committee. AD Sykes informed Trustee Gibbons that Coach Crarey's previous contract, where he was the head coach and an assistant athletic director, was about $95,000. Okay.
Not that should even matter. That part.
Not that it should matter. Exactly.
But the rest of it,
he doesn't know the process. He doesn't know the process. Really? You don't know the process. You don't, Okay, I'm not gonna go there. The contract which he's being offered, $150,000, is the same dollar value that Coach McCollum received in 2017 and when he was extended in 2021. The same $150,000 base. Now, there may have been escalators and extra bonuses that were different, but the contract is the exact same. You can go look it up. $150,000 a year. That's what he's getting. Same damn contract. Nothing new. There's nothing new. But I don't know. Trustee Gibbons, the chair of the athletics committee, didn't know the process, didn't know all this was happening. Okay. Another interesting, Trustee Lawson. Now, it was Trustee Lawson motion to saying that discussion should be tabled. He said due process wasn't allowed. He wants to know the outcome of 16 players. I just told you what about the 16. Where do you think Trustee Lawson got information about 16 players from? Okay. But again, bad information given leads to a statement by Trustee Lawson. Okay. And then he brings up a potential Title IX NCAA violation. I don't understand that. But again, our athletic director had a history in compliance. I read that to say, if you're asking this question, you're questioning her knowledge and her ability to do her job. Isn't that what, is that, anybody read anything different into that?
Absolutely.
That's what I read. Lawson says, quote, from the Democrat article, at this point, given where we are and the concerns, look at this part. We all have about the process. You all have issues with the process and the need for more information. So everybody on that committee, Trustee Gibbons, Trustee Perry, Crossman, Figures, May, Stone, Washington, and White, you all have issues with the process? Is this process
Bryan?
Yes.
Bryan, did we not hear the same thing from the board as well as the committee that was over the football process?
Ding.
It ain't the only point I'm making. I'm not choosing sides, but this is not the first time that this has been stated. Same thing with that donate gate contract, and so I mean, to me, those are self-inflicted wounds. You can't let people go into meetings and have the ability to state that and to be true. After the history of just this year. All right.
So again, there's your summary of the 16 players, where technically it's 15. Again, eight of them were in the portal. 6 of them in the portal before the new coach was even named. Okay. That's just there. Okay. I'm just going to stay away from the whole Reverend McAllister letter, because again, as a understanding, having been a coach, or as a coach who has dealt with parents, I get it. I understand he sees things rolling as a parent. Okay. And again, if you're a new coach, I mean, we're talking about the walk-on process is what it is. That players will have an opportunity in the fall to try out. There are 3 players. What's not even mentioned in that group is that 3 players are still going to be on scholarship. So that, and this is again going back to this group. Okay, of the 15 players. No, let me rephrase that. 14, because one of those 15 left the team. Of those 14 players, 3 of them are supposed to be graduating in the summer, so they're still on scholarship this summer during summer session, so that they can graduate.
Hey, let me add one other thing.
Hold on, let me do the numbers here. So I'm gonna show you the numbers here, right? Because there's only 10. We can only have 13 scholarship players, right? We have 10. Those are the 3 that are right now holding a scholarship spot that they're not going to be coming back in the fall, but they're still on scholarship so that they can graduate. There's your 13 players. 7 new, 3 active returners, 3 on scholarship to graduate. Go ahead, Kelvin.
The only thing I want to add was, for me, 13, 15, whatever, a lot of them gone for whatever reasons. if the coach chose to, he could have reached back out to those guys who were in the portal who hadn't committed nowhere and bring them back. I'm sure just like all coaches do when they come on board, he talked to the staff that was there and asked their opinion and probably got some advice. As a matter of fact, I know he got some advice on maybe not who to keep, but who not to keep. All right. And they have their biases and the reasons for stating that. All that happens. So that part of it is just like the tripling of the salary, even though let's make a distinction. He had a salary. Part of his salary was for coaching. Part of it was for being an AD at where he was. So that's where that total number come from. Technically, not that it matters. It's tripled if you just coaches, if you just count his coaching salary. But it's neither here nor there. But what I want to say this about the kids, because we got an athlete getting ready to come on, and in the comments about we were 6-23. That's where, Brian, I reached out to you, and I've seen one or two people say it here about 6-23. So, what are we losing? And I want us to be careful about that part of it, right? Because coaching matters. The coaches decide who to play, the minutes they gonna play, come up with a game plan, try to, I saw a kid on last year's team that just turned the ball over and shot us out of games, and he would never come off the court, or he'd come off the court 2 minutes. Then I saw other guys, they get 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, they got 12 points on like 5 touches, and so, and you look at 4 of the kids we talking about who are left, they're going to other Division I programs. 1 within our own conference, and 3 at mid majors or higher. So talent ain't the reason why we were 6-23. I've been a season ticket holder in basketball for 20 plus years. I've seen a lot of bad basketball. to be frank, to be honest. But I didn't mind watching last year's team other than being frustrated at the ending because we never close games and some of the decisions. But my point is this: the kids, they do everything as long as they going to school, class, they working, they executing what the coach is putting them in the positions. Let's not badmouth the kids when they leave or just act like every player on that team didn't have talent, because those kids been picked up by other programs. And another thing, we didn't put into our program some of the recipe for the kids to develop, right? They don't have 24/7 access to the gym. They don't have a nutrition table per se. They don't have some of the things that other programs have, which which also can play into development. So while the coach has a right to bring in whoever he wants, the kids who were here, they wanted to be here. They wore that orange and green proudly. They did what they're supposed to do. So let's not disparage them for last season record.
All right. With that said, we'll put a pin in the conversation regarding this. I don't know. We'll touch on it at a later time. We just know that right now practices are happening. Summer practices are happening. We'll wait to see if Dr. Robinson exercises his right, which that's a whole nother thing. But whether he exercises his right to actually use a contract for a 1-year deal. But anyway, we'll wait to see what happens here in a moment.